So, you want to own a self-storage facility. Good, because this is the single most boring building in commercial real estate, and boring is exactly why it prints money. There are roughly 50,000 self-storage facilities in the United States right now. Together, they hold over 2 billion square feet of rentable space. That's 80 square miles of rooms full of things Americans bought, couldn't throw away, and don't want to look at. 3 times the size of Manhattan, dedicated entirely to stuff people forgot they own. 1 in 10 American households is paying rent on a storage unit right now. Not 1 in 10 people who have moved recently, 1 in 10 households, period. And that number has nearly doubled in the last 2 decades. In 2022, it was about 11%. By 2024, it had climbed to over 13%. The industry generates north of $45 billion a year. It survived the 2008 crash better than any other real estate category. It grew during the pandemic, and the largest company in the space, Public Storage, pulled in $4.8 billion in revenue last year from a product that is, at its core, an empty metal box with a padlock. So how much does it actually cost to build one? What do you really make? Why is a room with no plumbing, no furniture, no windows, and no heat worth more per square foot than most apartments? And what happens to the stuff inside when nobody comes back for it? Let's start with the price tag. If you want to build a self-storage facility from the ground up, the first thing you need is land. 2.5 to 5 acres, zoned commercial, ideally on a main road with visibility and traffic. In a secondary market, you might find that for $300,000 to $700,000. In a suburb of a major metro, you're looking at $1 to $3 million before you've poured a single slab. Then comes construction. A basic single-story drive-up facility, no climate control, metal walls, roll-up doors, runs about $25 to $40 per square foot for the building itself. Add climate control, meaning insulated walls, HVAC, a vapor barrier, and you jump to $50 to $75 per square foot. Go multi-story with climate control in a metro market, the kind of facility you see in cities where land is too expensive for a single story, and you're looking at $100 to $170 per square foot. None of those numbers include site preparation, which can run anywhere from $5 to $80 per square foot, depending on how much work the land needs. Grading, drainage, utilities, stormwater management, fencing, paving, security systems, signage, landscaping, permitting. All in, a mid-size facility of 200 to 400 units, the kind most independent owners operate, costs somewhere between $2 and $5 million to build from scratch. That's before you've signed a single tenant. And here's the part nobody on YouTube who's selling you a self-storage course will tell you. It takes up to 36 months for a new facility to reach stabilized occupancy. That means you are carrying $2 to $5 million in debt, paying interest, paying taxes, paying insurance, and generating almost no income for up to 3 years while the building fills up. This is not passive income. This is a construction loan you're praying the neighborhood needs. So why does anyone do it? Here's why. Look at the product you're actually selling. A 10 by 10 storage unit. 100 square feet. The size of a small bedroom. The national average rent for that unit is somewhere around $75 to $120 a month, depending on whose data you trust and whether it's climate controlled. Now think about what's inside that room. Nothing. No toilet, no sink, no window, no drywall, no carpet, no appliance, no furniture. It is a concrete slab, 4 metal walls, a ceiling, and a roll-up door. The materials cost for that unit was maybe $3,000 to $5,000 when the facility was built, and it is now generating $1,000 to $1,400 a year in rent, every year, indefinitely, with essentially zero maintenance. Compare that to an apartment. An apartment unit costs $150,000 to $300,000 to build, has plumbing that breaks, appliances that fail, tenants who call you at midnight, and a legal eviction process that can take months. A storage unit costs a fraction of that, has no plumbing to break, no appliances to replace, no tenants who live there, and a lien process that lets you sell everything inside if they stop paying.
This is the mechanism. Self-storage is not a real estate product. It is a subscription service for the American inability to throw things away. And like any subscription, its real profit doesn't come from the people who sign up. It comes from the people who forget to cancel. The average storage rental in the United States lasts about 10 months, but about a third of all renters keep their units for more than 2 years. These are the customers who moved across the country and told themselves they'd come back for the couch, who divorced and couldn't deal with splitting the photo albums, who inherited a parent's belongings and couldn't face sorting them. The unit is not storing their things, it's storing their guilt. And guilt is the most reliable recurring revenue source in American real estate. This is where the margins come from. A well-run self-storage facility operates at a 35 to 40% expense ratio, meaning 60 to 65% of gross revenue drops straight to net operating income. Public Storage, the largest operator in the country, runs a same-store NOI margin pushing close to 79%. Compare that to an apartment building, which is lucky to hit 55. The reason is labor. A 300-unit storage facility can run with 1 or 2 employees. Many independent facilities today are managed entirely remotely, with automated gates, digital leases, online payments, and a camera system watched from a laptop in another state. Your product has no moving parts, requires no cleaning between tenants, and the customer does all the work themselves. They bring a truck, they load their things, they lock the door, they leave. You sell them empty air, and they thank you for it. Now, if you don't want to build from scratch, the other path is buying an existing facility. About 70 to 75% of the 50,000 facilities in the country are still independently owned. Mom-and-pop operations, 1 or 2 locations, often with below-market rents, poor online presence, no dynamic pricing, and a manager who is also the owner and also 63 years old. This is where the real money in self-storage has been made in the last decade, not by building, but by buying an underperforming facility, raising rents to market, adding a website, installing modern access control, cutting the on-site manager, and either holding for cash flow or flipping to a REIT. Smaller facilities, 50 to 200 units, trade for $500,000 to $3 million. Larger ones run $3 to $10 million. The number that sets the price is called the cap rate, which is just net operating income divided by purchase price. For self-storage in 2026, cap rates on stabilized facilities sit somewhere in the mid-5 to mid-7% range, depending on the market. That means a facility generating $300,000 in NOI is worth somewhere around $4 to $5.5 million. But here's the reality check. 4 companies now control a massive slice of the American self-storage market, and their gravity is bending the entire industry. Public Storage, Extra Space Storage, CubeSmart, National Storage Affiliates. These are publicly traded REITs, real estate investment trusts, with billions in capital, proprietary pricing algorithms, and the ability to acquire 100 facilities in a single quarter. Public Storage alone owns or operates over 3,000 facilities across 40 states. In 2025, it acquired 90 facilities for nearly $1 billion. Extra Space picked up 27 in a single quarter. These companies are not competing with you on service. They are competing with you on data. Their systems adjust the price of every unit in every facility in every city, in real time, multiple times per day, based on demand, seasonality, competitor pricing, and the specific behavior of the customer browsing their website at that moment. You, the independent owner with 200 units, are setting rent once a quarter based on what the guy down the road is charging. You are playing checkers on a board where the other side has already automated chess, and the consolidation is accelerating. The independently owned share of the market has been shrinking steadily. Every year, more mom-and-pop owners retire, sell to a REIT, or hand their facility over to a third-party management platform run by one of these same companies. CubeSmart alone now manages over 860 facilities for other owners. Extra Space manages over 2,000.
When you hire a REIT to manage your facility, you are training your future buyer. They learn your market, your tenants, your revenue, and your weaknesses. And in 2 years, they make you an offer. Now let's talk about the part of this business that nobody is comfortable with. When a tenant stops paying rent, you don't evict them. There are no tenants in the traditional sense. There is no lease court, no 30-day notice, no sheriff at the door. Instead, you have something called a lien. Every state has a self-storage lien law, and the details vary, but the basic structure is this.
When a customer falls behind, you send a series of written notices over a period of weeks. If they still don't pay, you have the legal right, without going to court, to cut the lock, inventory the contents, and sell everything inside at public auction. Without the lien sale, your business doesn't function. You'd have units permanently occupied by people who stopped paying, generating zero revenue, and you'd have no legal mechanism to clear them out. The lien sale is the engine that keeps self-storage economically viable. Every owner depends on it. But here's the problem. It is also the single largest source of lawsuits in the industry. If you skip a notice, send it to the wrong address, auction the unit one day too early, fail to advertise the sale properly, or sell the belongings of someone who turned out to be an active duty service member, you are exposed. Courts have awarded tenants over $300,000 for a single wrongful sale. The Department of Justice recently secured a $130,000 settlement against a storage operator who auctioned the belongings of active duty military members without the court order required under federal law. A wrongful sale lawsuit was filed against Public Storage itself in Los Angeles, alleging the company auctioned a tenant's property in violation of California's Self-Service Storage Act. Public Storage, the largest operator in the country, 3,000 facilities, dedicated legal teams, and they still got sued for getting the lien process wrong. If it can happen to them, it will happen to you. And then there's the thing inside the unit that nobody planned for. A significant number of storage units in the United States are eventually abandoned. Industry data suggests that roughly 155,000 units are auctioned off every year because the owners simply stopped coming back. The average auction yields about $425 per unit, which means a meaningful portion of your revenue eventually comes from selling strangers' belongings to other strangers in a parking lot. That is the business. You build a metal box. You rent it to someone in the middle of a life transition, a move, a divorce, a death in the family, a deployment. They fill it with the things they can't deal with. They pay you $75 a month to not think about it. And one day, they stop paying, and you sell their wedding photos and their dead mother's furniture to a guy who showed up because he saw a listing online. Nobody puts that in the investor pitch deck. So let's pull it all together and run the math on what you actually make. Scenario 1. You build a mid-size facility from the ground up. 250 units, a mix of sizes, some climate-controlled, in a secondary market with decent demand. Total project cost, including land, construction, site work, and soft costs. Call it $3.5 million. You finance 75% of that, so you're putting up about $875,000 of your own cash.
It takes you about 2.5 years to reach stabilized occupancy, around 85 to 90%. At that point, your facility is generating roughly $240,000 a year in gross revenue. After operating expenses at a 40% ratio, your net operating income is about $144,000. After debt service on your loan, you're looking at maybe $50,000 to $80,000 a year in actual cash flow, on $875,000 of your own money. That's a 6 to 9% cash-on-cash return, after you waited 3 years to get there. Not bad, but not the passive income gold mine the YouTube gurus promised you either. Scenario 2. You buy an existing facility, 300 units, independent owner who hasn't raised rents in 4 years. Occupancy at 80%. Purchase price, $2.5 million. You raise rents to market, add a website, install remote management, cut the on-site manager, and push occupancy to 90% over 18 months. You've increased NOI from $150,000 to $240,000. The facility is now worth $4 million at a 6% cap rate. You made $1.5 million in equity on a $2.5 million purchase. That's the play, not building, buying broken, fixing it, and selling to a REIT. But the window for that play is closing. The REITs know it too. They're not buying fewer facilities, they're buying more and faster, and at prices that make the math harder for the next independent buyer. And one more number to put all of this in perspective. If you had taken that same $875,000 you used as a down payment on your ground-up facility and invested it in public storage stock 10 years ago, it would be worth roughly $2.5 million today, with dividends reinvested. No construction loan, no 36-month lease-up, no lien sale lawsuits, no midnight calls about a broken gate. You would have made more money owning the company that owns the boxes
than you would have made owning the boxes yourself. And that's the uncomfortable truth about self-storage in 2026. The product is brilliant. A metal room with no moving parts that Americans will pay $1,000 a year to fill with things they'll never look at again. It is one of the best businesses ever invented.
But the best time to own one was 20 years ago when there were half as many facilities, no rights with pricing algorithms, and a country that was just beginning to realize it had more stuff than it could fit in its houses. Today, you're not entering an empty market. You're entering a market that the biggest players have already optimized, automated, and priced to the decimal. You can still make money, but you are no longer buying a business. You are buying what's left after the machines already picked the best units.